There are some items in pop culture that become so symbolic, so important, that they change your life forever. Movies, video games, books, and board games. I know how it began for me. The first time I was properly introduced to Games Workshop fictional universes was with the now legendary board games they released along with Milton Bradley in the late 80s and early 90s. For a kid whose impression about board games was something along the lines of Parcheesi or Hungry Hippos or Monopoly, these games were mind-blowing. These board games were dramatic and enthralling, bolstered by the inclusion of detailed miniatures, scenery, and lots of narrative elements. All of a sudden, I was feeling a real connection to the world and events that happened in it, and my friends and I felt part of a story developing alongside, influenced by our efforts and tribulations in the game system. The collaboration between Games Workshop and Milton Bradley was great marketing for the Nottingham Company, a gateway to the products which turned into a lifelong love for miniatures and a passion that would hold my wallet and I hostage to the whims of Games Workshop for many years to come. And I know I was not alone on this. Space Crusade was designed by Stephen Baker, who had previously created the hugely popular HeroQuest. Instead of HeroQuest's dark fantasy setting, Space Crusade introduced players to the grim darkness of the far future.
In the galaxy of the 41st millennium, the human race is assailed by numerous enemies. The empire of mankind depends on superhuman soldiers to defend itself. Equipped with powerful weapons and armor, genetically enhanced, fanatically committed, and exceptionally well trained, these soldiers are known as the Space Marines. Their mission is to destroy the enemies hiding within the entrails of ancient, abandoned spaceships, the so-called Space Hulks.
Space Crusade was designed to host up to 4 players. 3 of them will each manage a squad of Space Marines, and the 4th player, the alien player, will use hordes of creatures to destroy the Space Marines assaulting his Space Hulk lair. To represent the Space Hulk, the board consists of an interchangeable layout of 4 sections. The Marine players will assault them through entry points that symbolize boarding ships, and then seek to both complete their mission objectives and kill enemies to earn points. Likewise, the alien player objective is to get points by killing Marines and preventing them from achieving their objectives. Compared to HeroQuest, where the enemies are stationary on the map until the adventurers discover them, Space Crusade gives more agency to the alien player by using a clever mechanic: blips. These are blips. In-game, they represent signals picked up by the Space Marine scanners. They are moved by the alien player until direct visual contact is made with the Marine player. At that moment, the blip is flipped around, revealing the creature it represents. This simple mechanic keeps the tension high, as a blip could represent anything from a humble Gretchen to a deadly Chaos Space Marine or a nightmarish Dreadnought. Unlike HeroQuest, Space Crusade was a competitive game between all parties involved. Everyone sitting at the table wanted to get the most points and win the round. Played as a campaign, winning is achieved by using those points to get to the highest ranking for their particular faction. Captain Signoris for the Space Marine players, or Lord of Chaos for the alien player. Now, what made both HeroQuest and Space Crusade very similar was that they were easy to learn, easy to play, and very fun. For kids 10 and above, it was an attractive and immersive experience. I purchased a second-hand copy on eBay for a semi-decent price. Space Crusade is not as sought after as the old HeroQuest, but the prices are high, usually going for over $200 for a decent copy. When choosing the copy for purchase, I was intentionally looking for one that would be complete or almost complete, but I didn't want anything too shiny or new. In fact, I enjoy buying somewhat mistreated games and bringing them back to life. That makes the process much more fulfilling and I hope more fun for you to watch. I don't shy from badly painted miniatures and I ended up purchasing this one. I also wanted to have one different from my Spanish version, which features the cover art by Jim Burns and not the one from Dave Skew. Whenever I get this kind of parcel, I get super excited to see what's inside of it. And first order of business is checking paint jobs and the general state of the miniatures, as well as of anything else in the game, the box included. The pictures from eBay gave me a general idea, but there is no substitute for holding stuff in your own hands. These are the type of paint jobs we attempted when we began collecting our minis and didn't know any better. Nowadays, with so many good painting channels out there and thousands upon thousands of articles on the internet, there is no excuse whatsoever not to learn. It was quite different back in the 90s, because unless you had access to a mentor or a painting guide, it was all guesswork and experimenting. The game was an obvious combination of bits and odd ends from 2 or more copies. There were some extra weapons and some missing, and 2 of the gene stealers belonged to different games. One from the first or second edition of Space Hulk, and the other one maybe from the Warhammer 40K Battle of Macrash Starlit box. Some missing weapons too, and some broken stuff that will need addressing later, and that is all well by me. Nothing inspires me more than some kind of abused mini that can be fixed with a little bit of patience and love. After a first inspection, the next step will be to strip the minis. For these miniatures, I used brake fluid. This is my stripping method of choice, as I have used it for many years, and it works. No matter what I have thrown at it, brake fluid has proven itself over and over again. And on top of that, it doesn't damage plastic minis. Many other things can be used, but sometimes they are hard to get a hold of. And where I live, finding isopropyl alcohol is not that easy, and as of now, brake fluid is still my favorite stripper. I just tore the bases from the minis and I left them soaking in a tub for a few days whilst I started fixing all the stuff in the box. One of the most common things I find when I restore old games is filth. It is understandable, as these are items we game with, and fingers do have a lot of germs and nastiness in general, more so when we play and eat at the same time. That needs to be fixed. I carefully dismantled the original commander scanners, as they are very fragile. These are where you can track the weapons your squad has, the life points of a squad sergeant, and the scores for the marine players. They add a nice way to track things in game, but they are made with a very flimsy plastic, so they were heavily damaged. Fixing these is going to be a difficult task, but I wanted to keep them as close as I could to the original. I clean and wash everything. At this moment, water and soap are your best friends. And then comes the tedious job of stripping the paint. I use both an old electronic and a manual toothbrush for it, but it still took quite a lot of time to do. And after the big bulk of the old paint was removed, I use a metal bristle brush to try to remove the last remnants. Nevertheless, even after another bath in brake fluid and another go at brushing, some very stubborn paint was left in the miniatures, and the only solution I had left was using a pin. The whole thing is a long and boring process, but it makes me rather happy to restore minis, and the results usually speak for themselves. Space Crusade has quite a lot of cardboard and paper components. Now, the board sections, the doors, lots of tags and counters. The game has cards, and I wanted these to be sleeved. Their size is 54 by 80 millimeters, so I ordered some plastic sleeves and got them protected for heavy gaming. Speaking of cardboard, we cannot ignore the box, which was in very bad shape. Honestly, I bought this copy partially because of it. I really enjoy fixing all the stuff, and the box is one of my favorite parts to work with. I needed first and foremost to get rid of the unsightly sellotape. There was a significant quantity of tape. For this, I always use a hairdryer to soften the glue, so then I can pull the tape off easily. When working this way, you need to grow some resistance to the heat, as your fingers will continuously get blasted with a steady stream of hot air. But there are tricks to make it more bearable nonetheless. Once I removed all the tape, I used some sticky out to get rid of the adhesive left on the box, and along with the different parts of the box, I ironed all the different cardboard pieces to kill any fungi, bacteria, or whatever the heck will have stuck to them during the last 30 years, and also to get rid of small usage damage like bent corners or chafing. Once done, the box needed some serious love. I glued the corners and the side that was broken using paper strips and white glue. The idea is to reinforce those corners and to make sure the sides are stuck together in a sturdy way. The box has to still do its job for years to come. It is an easy but time-consuming process, and you need to be careful when gluing all the pieces or it might be too tight and it won't close. After washing it, the tray of the box was still usable 100%, but I decided I wanted to splurge a little extra cash on the game because I know that the day will come when I need to move somewhere else, and having a lovely painted set of miniatures put together in zip bags is a recipe for disaster. So I put an order to Feldherr for their foam trays for Space Crusade, and this set cost me around 35 euros plus shipping, and it holds all the different parts of the game inside. It is much better than the flimsy plastic tray that it came with, but the 3D printed trays were bent and I had to heat them up to get them back to shape, which was an added burden I really didn't want to do. The miniatures are very protected though, so I guess it is a win after all. This is plastic crack at its best. The miniatures themselves are the most interesting feature of the game, and they are superb models. Even when we consider they were made 30 years ago, and although the general vibe of the factions they represent has drastically changed over the years, they look nice and they stand their ground. For nostalgia nerds like myself, they are awesome mementos of what we experienced back in the early 90s. Besides cleaning the old paint jobs, there are several things that I wanted to do here, and one was magnetizing the weapons for the Marines in the game. The Marine players can decide the loadout of their squads before the game, so having interchangeable weaponry is a must. The game came with pegged weapons that will be inserted in the minis as needed, but I think magnets are a more elegant solution to this. It does take some work though, and proper planning. You need to make sure you buy small neodymium magnets of the following sizes, and that you also have proper superglue, because mine was a nightmare to use. It has to be something that dries fast and doesn't go all over the place. That and a nice hand drill with a appropriate size for the magnets. Now, magnetizing weapons is a very common thing in Warhammer 40K, mostly with big miniatures that have plenty of options. I think it is a very good idea that will save money in the long run when it comes to buying different options for your army, as you can then tailor the miniatures to the specific needs of the games ahead. For Space Crusade, the premise is the same and it absolutely makes a lot of sense. If your holes are a little too big, you can always put a small drop of super glue and sprinkle some baking soda on top of it. Now, baking soda and super glue cure immediately and make a concrete-like surface that can be sanded or cut. Now, be careful because when you mix them together, they get quite hot. It's an exothermic reaction and it is not fun to get burned. It happened to me a couple of times. You will notice that some of the miniatures I got actually were missing weapons or they were broken. I used the 2mm foam board to create weapons. And the claws of a Gen Stealer. And also to create a bionic leg for this Chaos Space Marine. Overall, it was a very fun experience doing this, but you know, if you don't want to do something like that, getting a game that the pieces are absolutely complete and not broken, that's probably the best option for you. For me, restoring is such a nice experience that I enjoy doing this quite a lot. Now, regarding the bases, I thought about 3 different options here. The first one was to go full middle hammer and paint the bases with some sand and goblin green. This will make it look even more vintage, but I didn't feel it will make much sense to have Space Marines on AstroTurf within Space Hulk. this wouldn't work. The second option was hand painting something on the bases that will look like it belonged in the Space Hulk. This definitely worked for my HeroQuest miniatures, but I was not very sure I will have the patience and skill to paint patterns with a more regular layout. I discard this option as well. The last one was getting or making bases that had an industrial feel, and I could very well go on and buy third-party 3D printed bases or buy necromunda bases like the ones my share have, but I decided I wanted to go full custom and make my own. The process is as follows. Since these were not new, I had to clean the bases from paint and fill in any gaps on them. I stuck some mosquito netting to them. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to choose a good glue for this. I used super glue, put some weight on it, and then left it to dry. After the glue had cured, I cropped the extra netting on the sides. I then cut some plastic art and some foam board and created interesting pieces to glue on top. The foam board I use is 2mm thick. I have used it previously for other projects like my home printed Warhammer Quest, and it is a great material that it is cheap and easy to carve. For the bases here, I recommend using a blunt tool like a sculpting blade or something similar to add some pattern marks, holes, nicks and bends. It is very easy to do by just applying a little bit of force on it. From that, you just have to cut some pieces in any way you like and glue them to the bases. And after the glue cures, you simply get rid of the extra stuff protruding from the base and carve the borders a little with a sharp blade. Here is where you add some extra stuff to give it that ruined industrial flavor. Plastic art is cut, bent, nicked and glued to the bases. Small bits can be used to create rivets or other interesting stuff like light bulbs or whatever your imagination can come up with. I also included some plastic rods, but this can be made out of toothpicks or brass rods among other things, and they become cables, pipes, some more rivets, etc. Last but not least, you can add some stuff like these small jewelry bits, which will take the place of discarded cartridges. If you have a bit box, search for some stuff there like weapons, skulls, etc. and add some very fine sand or baking soda. The possibilities are endless, it's up to you what to put in there. Once the bases were done, I pinned the minis to them and they were ready to be primed and painted. But that will have to wait for another video. So if you want to see how I get this fantastic game painted, make sure that you subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss out on that. There is nothing as annoying to fix as this flimsy plastic the scanners are made of. These are not absolutely necessary for the game to be playable, but they are iconic and they do add feel to the experience. I had to think about a way that I could restore them. The first option I had was to use some plastic art to add structural strength. This is a good idea, but when I got the foam inserts from Feldherr, the scanners will not fit on top of each other as intended, and therefore I had to start again. I used some duct tape and stuck it to the inside of the scanners. Then I covered the cracks from the outside with some super glue and added baking soda on top. This, once it cured, I sanded to make it look a little bit better. And once that was done, I sealed it with some Mod Podge. I have plans to paint these afterwards, so I hope that it is not too evident that they have been fixed. What took you just now a few minutes to watch has been weeks of work. These projects take quite a lot of time. I spent countless hours thinking on how to approach some of the things that you have seen done, like making the bases or fixing the damn scanners. Nevertheless, the game is now fully playable and it is begging for some dice rolling. However, I must resist temptation as I want to have the full immersive experience of getting everything painted and looking the way it needs to look for me to enjoy this treat to the max. I think we are off to a good start and I'm so far happy with the results. Do you agree? I want to ask you for a couple of favors, and the first of all is to let me know in the comments below which part of the game do you want me to paint next. And then, if you haven't done it yet, consider subscribing to the channel and activating notifications. Do you want to see other classic games I have restored and painted? How about checking out this video? Remember, my name is Miguel, this is Rush the Wash, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Un beso, adiós.